It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. Going to start the day off. Good news coming out of the White House. Joe Biden's executive order on the White House task force on worker organizing and empowerment. Yes, we have a seated president who is going to encourage workers to join and form unions. Look, in my lifetime, we've had a lot of Democrats who've come out and say, "Oh yeah, we like those union people. We want more people to be in unions, but we're not going to actually do anything to help that." You know, I go back to Carter getting nothing done, to Bill Clinton, lots of this, lots of lip service, no actual deeds getting done. Promised a strike replacement, didn't happen. And then you had Barack Obama, who in my view was the biggest disappointment of all, because he ran on, hey, we're going to do something better than the Employee Free Choice Act. And in fact, I shook the man's hand twice and asked him point blank, face to face, are we going to get something done? And he said, we're going to get something better. And we got nothing, got squat. And in fact, in the biggest labor uprising of the last 50 years, I would argue, and that's what happened in Wisconsin, the administration, the Obama-Biden administration, completely silent. In fact, now we hear the stories that Biden wanted to go. Biden wanted to participate, but Obama said, no. So we're going to stay away from that. Even though he did say, as campaign Obama, going to put on those comfortable shoes and we're going to walk the picket lines. And I remember in 2011, being in Wisconsin going, President Obama, if you need some comfortable shoes to borrow, I got them. You can borrow mine. I'll go barefoot if I have to. But you needed to be there. For me, this is, again, another one of those things that I'm thrilled with Joe Biden about. We can argue, we can complain about, has he done enough? He's done more than any Democratic president in my lifetime to help workers organize. Now, could we say that the PRO Act is enough? No, it's not. I want a full repeal of Taft-Hartley. To me, I would like nothing short of that. But the PRO Act is a huge step in the right direction to get workers the ability to join and form unions. Because right now, we're almost, and I think we actually are, in the private sector, the union density in the private sector is I think, right where it was back when it was illegal to be a union member. Back when you had no legal protections whatsoever, and people had to meet under the railroad trestle to have meetings at midnight and sworn to secrecy because they could be blacklisted. It was about the same density across the country as it was then. But today, the president signed the executive order creating the White House task force on worker organizing and empowerment. The vice chairs will be the vice president, Kamala Harris, and Secretary of Labor, Marty Walsh. This is a good thing. The task force will have 20 secretaries, ranging from, the Department of Labor, obviously, to the Treasury Secretary, Defense, Interior, Agriculture, Commerce. All of them will be on this task force. Transportation, energy, all of them will be on this task force to use the full faith and power of the federal government to encourage people to collectively bargain. I think that is incredibly important right now. I think it's something that we desperately need, and it's something I'm glad to see that he's gone after. It comes in 4 components. To lead by example, they say, by ensuring the federal government is a model employer with respect to encouraging worker organizing and collective bargaining amongst the workforce. I'm sure AFGE is thrilled to hear that after the 4 years of being simply assaulted by Donald Trump. The fact that they were imposed contracts upon, they were fired, people were fired. I mean, there was tons of stuff that, well, the antithesis of what unions stand for. Now, this is an interesting point. Are we going to see the federal government move in that direction and encourage collective bargaining? I hope so. The second point of it is to facilitate worker organizing across the country by taking in all of the government approach to mobilize the federal government's policies, programs, and practices to provide workers the opportunity to organize and bargain collectively. It means procurement, giving preferential treatment to people who allow their workers to join and form unions. Not that they have to. And this is the important part in all this, giving people a free and fair option to join. That's the important part. Also, the third part of it, they say increase worker power in the underserved communities by examining and seeking to address the particular challenges to worker organizing in jurisdictions with restrictive labor laws. The added challenge that marginalized workers in many communities encounter, including women and people of color, and the heightened barriers to organizing workers in certain industries. Basically looking at right-to-work states in the South, right-to-work states across the country who have, abused the law that they dreamt up out of whole cloth simply to destroy unions, and the industries that fled to the southern states to exploit labor at every opportunity. And I think this is a good thing to be looking at. And the fourth part of it is the fourth goal: increase union membership across the United States to grow a more inclusive middle class and provide workers the opportunity to come together for the purpose of mutual advancement, the dignity of the worker and workers, respect, and fair compensation they deserve. Those are the four tenets of the task force, what they're going to pursue. And I'll be honest, I'm thrilled to see that there's some preferential treatment to giving workers a voice. And I'm not saying that everyone is going to be forced into it. And this is what the right-wing spin has been. Well, they're going to force all of you. You all now have to join those socialist unions. No. People have to be given the opportunity. Free and clear of the harassment that we saw in the Amazon campaign. If you paid attention to what happened in those multi-month long campaign of constant harassment by the employer, posting anti-union stuff, garbage all over the restroom stalls, having people walk through the plant with sandwich boards, always in your face with anti-union messaging. Not to mention all of the captive audience meetings that they forced people to sit through, hours and hours of just constant threats and intimidation and all of the things that corporate America has been getting away with for decades. What we saw at Amazon, not new. The only thing that was new is that, we were paying attention, that we, the people, got to see firsthand, because it is a giant corporation in the spotlight. We got to see firsthand what happens to a working person. And I had someone recently ask me, I heard you say, and I've said this before, if I were in that situation and the employer is spending that kind of money, $200 million to fight back that campaign, which would have paid for any increases for the next 2 decades. I got to ask myself, if they're spending all this money telling me that they're worried about my rights and worried about me getting ripped off, I got to wonder what's in it for them. Because I know there are no benevolent corporations who care about me being exploited. They're exploiting me enough. I go back to what my grandfather always said. If a rich guy's going to take a buck out of his pocket to tell you don't need something, you better spend 2 to get it. Because he understands the return on investment. So if Amazon's spending $200 million to tell its working people, no, you don't need any of that. You don't need that. I say you got to spend something to get it. Because there's something that they're not telling us. and what we know with a union comes better wages, better hours, better working conditions. We know that. And so does the employer, which is why they fight the way they have. So to see that Biden is putting forth this task force, to see that they're pushing the PRO Act, which addresses some of that. And as I've said, look, for me, the PRO Act isn't isn't the end-all be-all. For me, the end-all be-all is, let's go back to the original intent of the National Labor Relations Act, which gave employers no rights whatsoever. Not a single word, not a single sentence, not a paragraph, nothing in the original National Labor Relations Act gives employers any rights whatsoever. And you go, well, how can that be? Well, it can be because they understood that the employers hold all the rights. They've got all the cards. They make all the decisions. And without somewhat a little bit leveling that playing field, it remains a master-servant relationship. In fact, here in Pennsylvania, our workers' compensation law, written back in 1915, still refers to the employer and the employee as master and servant. Because that's the way the corporations think of their employees. This idea that, oh, they're beloved and the benevolent employer is going to take care of the lowly worker. That doesn't happen. So I'm glad to see that Biden is moving in this direction. I want to see Democrats as a whole. I want to see the Democratic Party come around. And I would really love to see Republicans come around to the idea that working people need to have a voice on the job. That they should, if we're going to grow this economy, if we're going to return America to being great, we do that by having people having the ability to support their families, not have to beg for handouts, and to return reward and dignity to work. I mean, that's the key in this. And I sound like a broken record sometimes because this is something that I've been talking about for all of the 16 years I've been doing this program. For me, this is the fundamental key to a fairer, more equitable nation. Economic equality is economic justice, economic, sanity is where we need to go back to. We've got a really well-to-do billionaire class. They're doing just fine. Thank you very much. And when one of the richest men in the world, Jeff Bezos, goes, you know what, maybe we do need to do a little better by our employees. That's really a slap in the face, especially when you know that he spent $200 million stopping those workers from getting the kind of dignity and respect that I think they deserve. And that comes from having a job that isn't going to kill you, having a job that you can support your family with decent health care and a little retirement security, and dignity in the work that you do, and some voice in the place that you do it. It's always amazing to me, and I've been going through this for a while. It's amazing to me that we as Americans, when it comes to employment, when it comes to our job, most people in the working class are willing to take what they're given. Or as my wife says to our kids, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. And sadly, we as working people have put up with that. And it's got me thinking about, I was running this idea of, when I bought a new car. And I've told this, this story to the kids, and the kids, laugh because it makes mom look bad. We went in, when we were having our third child, we needed to get a minivan. And my wife went in and, got to the dealership early, and she picked out what she wanted, and it had everything. It had heated seats and heated this and gadgets that buzz and things that whirl and heated, you name it, it had it. In fact, they invented gadgets to put on it just to make her happy. And I remember walking in, and she was beaming. She was as happy as she could be, and the salesman was equally happy. The salesman was thrilled because she was willing to take what he was offering. She was willing to pay the sticker price because she had, when she bought her first car, it was Saturn who had the no haggle pricing. And I remember we sat down, and the salesman, he slid the sheet. He goes, we got it all set down. We got it all taken care of for you. It's all good. And he slid the form over to me, and I looked at it and I go, No. No. It was an outrageous number, like $36,000. And I'm like, mm-mm. And we went back and forth a little bit until finally I said, okay, let's go. We got up and we were starting to leave. And, it was that moment where, you realize that you have leverage to negotiate. And, I tell that story because I know tons of people who do. And ultimately I did get like 10 grand off the cost of the van. And I was much happier with that. But we were willing to sit there and negotiate. I was willing to walk away. We were willing to hammer it out on both sides. But we don't usually do that with employment. And we've been trained to, you take what you get. Just be happy you have a job. And it got me thinking that, we're used to dickering and negotiating. Life is a constant negotiation. Just getting through a day with your kids is a constant negotiation. But in the workplace, we don't allow that. It's master and servant. And we fall into that role where we don't ask for too much. Just happy to have a job. Whereas I've been saying as a union member, and fortunately I've been a union member all of my working life, that moment where he slid the thing to me, I looked at it and I slid it back and said, no. That's the moment every working person should be able to do. And that's what being in a union gives you the ability to do. To slide that offer and go, no. We demand better. We demand better wages, better hours, better working conditions. We demand dignity. We demand respect. We demand that our labor be compensated fairly. And for me, that's the key to it. Now, there are a lot of people saying, well, this is what unions do and this is what they do. No, what they do is they say no. We demand better. Our work is worth more than what you're offering. This is the reason that the companies are dead set against unions, because they don't want to share. They don't want you getting a piece of the economic pie. They want it all for themselves. This is the war between capital and labor, and right now capital is kicking our butts because workers are divided, because we're willing to say, just glad to have a job. It's time to start saying no. It's time to put your hands in your pockets and march in the feet, in my view. Love to hear yours, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back with comedian Pete Dominick. Stick around.
On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1944. That was the day the Army National Guard seized the Chicago property of Montgomery Ward and removed its chairman, Sewell Avery. The Chicago-based company repeatedly refused to accept a National War Labor Board order to recognize the workers' union and abide by the board-negotiated collective bargaining agreements. After refusing the second board order, President Franklin Roosevelt ordered the Army National Guard to seize the company's central mail order house, retail store, and other related properties in the city. Avery was physically carried out of his office. Wartime no-strike pledges were in effect to avoid strikes or any disruption in war production. From a distance, it looked as if the president had triumphed the cause of labor in forcefully implementing the Wagner Act. Workers of the CIO United Mail Order Warehouse and Retail Employees Union had walked off the job over recognition issues on April 12th. Montgomery Ward officials argued again, as they had 2 years earlier, that they were not engaged in war production, held no government contracts, and that the dispute is not one which might impede the prosecution of the war by the board's own terms. But the government feared strike activity would only spread to other industries in Chicago and elsewhere. Local Teamsters and railway brotherhoods all supported the strike and refused to handle shipments to and from Ward facilities. The CIO union agreed to end the strike on the eve of the seizure. Others in the labor movement called FDR's move a hoax and a device to break strikes and get workers back on the job without any gains. Roosevelt issued a third seizure of Ward's facilities nationwide by the end of the year. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So if you were paying attention over the weekend, evidently meat is not for dinner anymore, according to the Republican mouthpieces and the spin masters. Evidently, we're only going to be allowed to have a hamburger once a month, if we're lucky. 4 pounds a year at the most. And in fact, no more beer that isn't plant-based. Larry Kudlow made that up. I don't know where he got it. I don't know where he's drinking animal fat beer. I don't think I would want it, but hey, good on the Kudlow man. And here to share some thoughts on the end of meat, on the really the last kind of culture war thing that the Republicans got on the climate. I've asked our good friend Pete Dominick to come talk with us. Pete's a fabulous comedian, world renowned, also host of the fabulous Stand Up with Pete. Pete, thanks for taking time for us.
Always take time for you, Rick. When I got your text today that you wanted to talk with me about meat, I said, I am Pete the Meat. Let's do it.
There you go. But plant-based beer, Pete. Plant-based beer.
Listen, as you know, Rick, I'm a very masculine guy. I, have all the qualities of the most masculine of men, which is why I only drink meat beer. I only will drink beer that is derived straight from the rib of cattle, and not of some dairy cow, of a beef cattle. That's where I want my beer to come from. And as a matter of fact, I refuse to drink my meat beer with a bottle opener. I will not open it with a bottle opener because I open my bottles with my teeth, Rick Smith, and that's how I drink my meat beer, and that's the kind of man that I am. And all these pansy-ass liberals that want me to drink the plant-based beer, whatever the hell these guys put in their pansy-ass plant-based beer, which is destroying the social fiber of America from within, I'm not interested, sir. Don't tell me to drink plant-based beer. I and my real American friends are going to continue to drink beer derived from cattle, and if you're a weakling, maybe venison. But that's where we draw the line, right at a deer, sir. Deer beer.
Deer beer. All right, there you go. That's a good one. See, now I have a conservative friend who said that the only beer that they drink are the tears of you libtards. That's what they drink.
That's just, I have no problem with that. It's just very expensive because those tears they're not hard to come by, but they're hard to bottle up. It's very hard to create enough volume, which is why we need these types of wedge issues to keep those tears flowing into the deer beer, Smith. By the way, right now I'm just drinking an espresso.
Pinky up, absolutely, you got to have that. But here's the thing, and this is there's part of me that goes, I'm glad they've gone to this extreme because it's all they've got left. There's nothing left for them to do, nothing more to divide us on other than making up things about Biden's coming after your hamburger and you're going to get stuck drinking beer with barley and hops.
Yeah, but let's be clear, it's effective. I mean, if we on the left or liberals or whatever these labels don't even serve anymore. People living in reality, we're able to be divided that way. If you were going to tell me that, if you told me you were going to take something away from me that I truly enjoy, that I truly love, something that I eat, something that's an interest of mine, and Rick, if I believed you, I'd be outraged too. I mean, if you told me that you were going to take away, let's see, Honey Crisp apples, if you told me you were going to take away my electric car, that I could no longer, all these, I don't know, whatever liberal ideas or things that we have, I'd be mad. And they truly believe, that's the thing about their arguments, and that's the thing that's so hard to be divided. We're divided on the right. They believe things that aren't happening. I wish that the things I believed weren't happening. I wish that climate change wasn't happening. That would be great. But they believe that the election was stolen. They believe that Joe Biden is going to take away their meat, because these are popular narratives that get created in echo chambers on the right. And the difference is they're not taking something from us, and we wouldn't believe them if they did, because we know how to look shit up. I mean, they just made this up yesterday. What's his name? Larry Kudlow. He's never been right about anything, but he certainly knows how to get people fired up and divided and get ratings.
I don't know about that. I watched it and I didn't get fired up. I just went, wow, what a poor, pathetic old dude.
But
he's trying too hard.
Of course, you didn't get fired up. He's not targeting you. He's targeting
no.
Look, actually believe such nonsense.
You take my hamburger, I'm going to be one ticked off dude.
But you didn't believe it.
No, I did not.
That's because you knew that wasn't happening. That's the difference. People, if you really told me you were going to take the thing I loved eating a few times a week, I'd be pissed too.
Yeah.
By the way, if you told me my vote didn't count and the election was stolen, I'd be really mad about that. I'd be so mad I might even raid the Capitol. They are told things that aren't happening, and then the people, they get outraged and they spread the word on social media and with their friends, and they're all outraged about something they don't even need to be upset about, because no one's taking away your meat, no one's taking away your guns, and other things that no one's taking away, that they buy it up, they soak it up, they lap it up, they love selling this stuff on the radio and on TV, with, Larry Kudlow being the latest to sell. I mean, he has no idea what he's talking about. That guy did so many mountains of cocaine. It's amazing that he's still alive.
Now that I don't know about, but I do know that he was Trump's, economic guru, and when you're saying the kind of things that he's saying, scary.
Well, I mean, it's interesting to think about how Joe Biden and most presidents, including Republicans, they appointed people to their cabinet and to the federal government that had experience in the thing. We might have thought they were evil, might have disagreed with them. I mean, think about George W. Bush's whole foreign policy team. Well, that's actually a bad example, because he put Paul Bremer in there and he didn't have a lot of experience. But most of these guys had experience and knew what they were doing. They ended up being wrong. But Trump got people from TV. He literally appointed. This is so hard to remember and believe, but it's also refreshing to see who Joe Biden is appointing now. He watched TV. He saw someone he liked, and he gave him the most important job in the world. And it is amazing that we are still here and able to talk, and that we weren't vaporized. And it's amazing that Joe Biden has made up for it by being the most, I think, courageously progressive president we've ever seen, and not only in policy, but especially in his appointments. Secretary of the Interior is a Native American woman. I mean, that is just amazing. And so it's hard to believe that we were there not too long ago with Larry Kudlow in charge of our money.
Yeah. And look, we got a guy who's the head of the Department of Labor who actually got his hands dirty. I think Marty Walsh is a good choice for that. And
Marty Walsh, I don't know if you know this. I don't know if you've told your audience this, but I know it for a fact, because I interviewed Marty Walsh in person several times. Marty Walsh, he smells amazing. He smells so good, always, every time. Sometimes you're around a guy and you're like, oh, that guy smells good. There's a detergent, maybe he's wearing a cologne, but then when you're around him again, you're like, oh my God, that was no fluke. Marty Walsh is a good smelling man. I'll tell you that right now. I'll tell you that, and I'll tell your entire audience that he smells delicious.
And why is that?
I don't know. Maybe it's a deodorant. Maybe
he bathes. Is that it?
Could be it. I don't know much about that. I live in a shed. I live in a damn shed.
I've never had the opportunity to interview him. We're trying, but I think he's a guy who can be very helpful. And maybe, to be honest, I'm not going to smell him.
Also, another interesting thing about him is, and I'm not sure where he's at with this, but I interviewed him shortly after he'd gotten sober. And so he's a guy who struggled with, alcoholism, right. And he's been real open about that. And he's such a great guy. I'm very excited to see him in the federal government, and especially at labor. It's a great point.
No, he's a guy who has lived a working class lifestyle.
For sure.
He's gotten his hands dirty. He's had struggles. He's had all those things. Somebody who's going to identify with Joe Sixpack. I think he's a good choice, and I think he's going to be very helpful. And I hope he does a really good job with the task force that they just put together today through executive order. to help encourage organizing and people to collectively bargain. I think that's going to be a good thing. But I want to go back real quick to the banning meat stuff, because you're right in saying that the right wing gets all bunched up in the panties and all crazy when they think something's being taken with them. And here's a moment where I think the conservatives can upset you. There's a state senator in Oklahoma. His name's Nathan Dame, I believe his name is. Basically an idiot on Twitter. He introduced Senate Bill 1065 that's going to ban paper straws. No more paper straws. Taking your paper straws away. Literally taking your straws away.
Well, you're right. I'm triggered. The environment is the issue that I care the most about, that I probably know the most about. It's probably the issue that I'm most kind of militant about. And I've shamed ineffectively more cashiers for giving me a plastic bag or a plastic fork or straw I didn't want than I'm ashamed to admit. I mean, it's not effective, but this plastic is absolutely horrible, and more research, and you don't really even need it because anecdotally you see it everywhere. But to use this kind of thing as symbolic, as a culture, to ban paper, which is so much more renewable for the environment, and push plastic. He's probably getting money from the plastic lobby, which is the oil industry, really. But that outrages me so much. But here's the difference: he's actually doing that. That's actually something he wants to do. That may happen, as opposed to what the right is so often worried about: banning meat. That's not happening. That's not. And by the way, everybody should eat less meat. It's better for the environment, and it's better for your body. We're not banning it. Eat less meat. Eat more chickens. That's still meat. But come on. I mean, these aren't. But we have to absolutely have less plastic in our environment. There's plastic everywhere, Rick. It's everywhere. It's in everything that we eat, that we drink. It's choking the planet and every species all the way up and down the food chain. And this guy you've really pissed me off with this information. I hadn't heard about that, but I'm now going to go record tomorrow's episode of my podcast, and I'm going to channel all that rage at this guy.
Your loss of
paper
straw.
Who needs a straw? If you don't have some kind of Bell's palsy or physical issue, the drinking with a straw is preposterous. If tribal people saw you drinking with a straw, why are you just put the chalice up to your mouth? What does a straw do other than make your face look stupid as you wrap your dumb lips around it just so that you can get the fluid up in it? It is literally there's no purpose for it. It's silly, it's unnecessary, and it's making it that much harder to get the drink into your mouth. A straw.
Yeah, I see. I use straws for one purpose and one purpose only. And it's been years since I've done it. I was in high school at the time for spitballs. Nothing more.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the same reason that Larry Kudlow uses them.
I don't even want to know how Larry Kudlow uses them.
He uses them to snort cocaine, I'm guessing. I don't know.
I was not going there.
I'm guessing.
I don't want to get sued. But here's the thing, and this is where I wanted to get you as the expert on the environment, or more expert than I am. We're in an interesting moment because the Republicans have come forth with a bunch of plans that they claim are going to address that. In fact, the congressman from here in Pennsylvania, Glenn Thompson, has come out and said that we're not debating whether or not climate change is real. Those days are over. The debate is simply how to best address climate change. So he's saying that the Republicans have moved on from the days of James Inhofe and snowballs and George Will of It's Summer. Now they believe they're now believers that climate change is real.
Well, to some extent, they are catching up because markets are making them. I mean, a generation ago, we should have been subsidizing, and we still should be, renewable energy. But the truth is now, renewable energy, especially solar and wind, has caught up with the price of coal, natural gas. Specifically, natural gas has helped put coal out, and renewable solar and wind is helping put natural gas, competing with natural gas. So it's a matter of making money. It's all they've ever cared about. They always put profit over people, profit over the planet. So they're not really tied to fossil fuels, everything that's under the ground that scientists say has to stay in the ground. If they can make money in another way, they'll go for it. And so green energy has changed. The markets have changed. It's become much more economical and competitive. And so they are changing their opinion with it. Of course, it was never about their opinion. It was only about the scientific consensus, which we have known for over a generation now. James Hansen made this, announcement and discovery in the 80s when he was a NASA scientist. And it's been confirmed over and over and over. The pH balance of the planet is way off, and we need to do a lot of things about it. And if Republicans think they can make money, they will. But make no mistake, they're still going to try to sell every ounce of oil they can drill and puncture into our planet's carcass.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But the reason I bring this up is, the Republican Party is trying to reinvent itself. They're trying to be the party of the working class. They now care about workers, not so much about corporations. They're mad at corporations because corporations want those black people to vote. I look at this as another one of those moments where the Republican Party has been wrong on the wrong side time and time again. And now we've changed our mind on a dime and then begin to lie in a different direction. And the minions just kind of come along.
Yeah, well, they're telling them a story that is one that they've been told for their whole lives. And a lot of them are obviously directly connected to the fossil fuel industry, or they're invested in it. And then there's a lot of people that are just hardworking folks that work in coal mines and so on. You want to speak to them and take into consideration those are real jobs making good money, and they're hard jobs working on fracking wells. But they're destroying the planet, and they're destroying local environments along with them. I just read this great book, Up to Heaven and Down to Hell, by a sociologist, Colin Geralmack, which is all about the fracking industry in Pennsylvania and how obviously so many people in that state have been just screwed over by the industry and the deal that they said they'd make when they bought their property and then beat the shit out of it. But they are going to continue to do whatever it takes to make money. I mean, they've always been on the wrong side of energy. Not to mention foreign policy and pretty much everything else. Yeah. But anything that had to do with science, anything that is, Americans need to consider their health, from seatbelts to smoking to climate change. They have never cared about human beings or animal species in the slightest. They've only cared about their own bottom line, their own quarterly profits. And that's still the case with most Republicans. And the rest of humanity says, you know what? We care a lot about everything, not just, our paychecks at the end of the month, because there's a lot more to life. And so
there you go. We need air. We need water. We need to live. You're spot on, Pete. I appreciate the time, the thoughts. Looking forward to having one of those plant-based beers with you in the near future.
Oh, I'll have a plant-based beer with you and any other wuss out there that drinks plant-based beer. These wusses. All right, I'm going to go drink ground beef smoothie. Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Pete. I appreciate the time. Our good friend Pete Dominick. Quick break. Right back after this.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1975. That was the day the AFL-CIO held a Jobs Now rally in Washington, D.C. A painful recession had pushed unemployment in the U.S. to 9%. Many workers across the nation thought the Ford administration was not doing enough to address the needs of working families. 60,000 people, many of them union members carrying banners representing their unions, gathered in RFK Stadium. There they heard speeches, including one from Senator Hubert H. Humphrey, who had served as vice president under Lyndon B. Johnson. His speech described the devastating impact of unemployment. Senator Humphrey said, "Our nation must recommit itself to the goal and the promise of full employment, a job for every American who is willing and able to work." Perhaps we would get bolder action and more compassion from this administration if some of its top advisors had a little taste of unemployment themselves. Perhaps they would know what unemployment is. It's drawing your last unemployment check with no job in sight. It's sitting in the dark to save on the light bill. It's making shoes last another month and driving on bald tires. It's eating a little less so the kids can eat a little more. It's facing eviction because you can't pay the rent or meet the mortgage. It's borrowing from your brother-in-law or letting your insurance lapse. It's facing yourself in the mirror and asking why and how much longer. It's wondering how a nation this rich, this enterprising, this great can let more than 8 million Americans who want to work and need to work go without work. Some protesters rushed the stage at the rally, causing it to end early. But his questions still remain. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
You know, one of the things that the pandemic has really highlighted, I think, for most people is the fact that our schools are such an important part of feeding our children, especially when you're talking about kids in low income and lower working class families. The fact that, you know, in our school district, you know, every Wednesday they would have, you know, come pick up meals for the week so that kids would have something. I'm thrilled to see the U.S. Department of Agriculture announcing today that they're going to be extending that nutrition program that we go get through the school year through the summers. Now, for those of us who are a little bit older like I am, I remember as a kid growing up in the projects in Cleveland in the summertime, going to Purtis Elementary School and lining up at lunchtime and getting a hot meal. Wasn't a lot, but it was something. And for a lot of kids in that line, the only hot meal they were going to get that day. Then what happened? You had Republicans and Ronald Reagan come in, Mr. Ketchup is a vegetable, and wiped it all out. So I'm glad to see that we're returning to some of that. Good on this administration. Anyway, the big census numbers out today. Reapportionment day. Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, a number of states losing congressional seats. And here to share some thoughts on, well, how bad apportionment has been, I've asked David Pepper to come talk with us. David is the former chairman of the Ohio Democratic Party. David, thanks for taking time for us.
Good to be back with you, Rick. Thanks.
So, you know, I look at the school lunch program as, I think, something vital and something that's good about policy. That, I mean, if we can't just agree to feed children, I don't know what we can agree on.
Yeah, I mean, I again, we talked about this on a prior show. I continue to be impressed by the Biden administration. He's got, I think, a very good cabinet. And they're going, you know, they're not playing around. They're not sort of doing things halfway. They're going all in on big priorities. And I think food insecurity, as you said, you know, schools are now a place where so many people without means are getting their meals. And I just love to see that, you know, whether it's some of the labor initiatives they're pushing on, whether it's the overall recovery, they're really going all in. And this, when I saw that, kind of like you, when I saw that headline the last day, I thought, yes. That's great. I think this is going to go down as, you know, and I don't think they're sitting around bragging about it, but I think in hindsight, this is going to be one of the most consequential first 100 days in American history. I mean, you look at what this president inherited, the division, the deaths in COVID, the economy, and they just have been putting points on the board again and again. In some places where you'd expect it, but others, just like this, a thoughtful way to make a difference. I just have been very impressed. This is another big move forward.
For me, as I've been saying, the thing I like about this administration is there's no fanfare. There's no, hey, congratulate me, love me, throw me attention. Just get up every day, do your job, and move on to the next day to do the next job. I had to dig for this press release. Yeah. This was not headlines anywhere. This was something I actually had to look for. Which is telling me that they're just doing the job. They're not looking for credit. They're just,
Right.
like you said, putting points on the board, and I think
Yeah, no,
it's a good
I'm
thing.
impressed. I'll keep being impressed.
Now, I want to get your thoughts on the apportionment. It looks like 7 states are going to be affected in, I guess 13 states are going to be affected in the shifting seats. Colorado, Florida, Montana, North Carolina, Oregon are going to gain seats. Texas, I guess, is going to get 2. California, Illinois, Michigan, Ohio, New York, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, all going to lose a seat. We're seeing a massive demographic shift, aren't we?
Yeah, we are, and there's some broader trends about the Midwest and the Southwest that we're seeing. But I will say, in Ohio, we had, when I first started running statewide and was in politics, we had 18 districts. Well, man, we'll now be down to 15. I do think in some states, there are, in our case, this is, you grew up in Ohio. I'm a proud Ohioan. When I was in law school, where I went to out east, they named me most likely president of the Cincinnati Board of Tourism, because I'd brag about Cincinnati all the time. We're the state of John Glenn and the Wright brothers and all that. And some states, I really think that the right-wing policies are leading a downward spiral. And one of the first impacts of the downward spiral is young people are going elsewhere. They're moving to some of the other cities and states that are more progressive, Virginia, Georgia. You're seeing it politically, but you see it today where Ohio is just not keeping up. And after several decades of the Republicans being in charge, they're making it harder and harder for a whole generation of people to say, I want to stay here. Yeah. And so today's numbers, sadly, aren't surprising. I will say there's an irony, though, and this we're slightly different than other states. We put into place some real protections against the next decade of gerrymandering. And so if the rules are followed, and I believe the courts will make sure they're followed, the Republicans are going to lose that seat, not the Democrats. We're at 12-4. It would be very hard for the Republicans to justify under the new Ohio Constitution a 12-3 map. So their own ineptitude at growing our population is going to lead them to have one of their own members walk the plank, I think, in the next year.
Yeah, I mean, Pennsylvania is going to lose another seat, and we'll see how this plays out. But again, we're seeing the in my view, the bad policies, deindustrialization, the fact that we haven't been able to grow the kind of economy that we need to.
Yeah.
And I would argue a lot of that has to do with the attacks on education, the attacks
totally.
on the environment, the attacks on social programs, all of those things, with education being right at the top.
Do you know what's ironic in Ohio is, do you know the 2 biggest growth spots in Ohio? The Columbus area and the Cincinnati area. Why? Democrats have been running progressive policies in these places. Young people are moving back to downtown Cincinnati. They're moving back to Columbus. These places are growing. The suburbs of these places are growing. And we know what's happening. They're actually more democratic. They're more progressive. So where the growth is happening in states like Ohio, it's actually where places are moving in the 21st century. And the policies that are sort of pure Republican played out policies is often where our communities are most struggling. So it's playing out in Ohio, and it's sad to see. I'm proud of Ohio, but clearly a lot of people are moving with their feet as they watch. Whether it's Bob Taft, John Kasich, Mike DeWine, it's the same trickle down attacks on workers, cultural attacks that young people find offensive. So they're going elsewhere.
And the hope is, because today Tim Ryan announced that he is going to be running for the U.S. Senate there, as Rob Portman has said he's not going to run for re-election. It would be great to see a Tim Ryan or someone as equally as good as Sherrod Brown fill that spot and have 2 good senators from Ohio.
Tim's a great candidate. He is as much of a unique combination of, I always love your posters and stickers and stuff in your office here. He is a total labor pro-worker candidate, but he also bridges that very well with the 21st century vision. How do we get the next generation of jobs into the Youngstown area? He's pushing very hard to have, modern, energy efficient vehicles, for example. So Tim is a great sort of bridge between the old and need to be, relived commitment to workers, but working very hard to create a 21st century economy. He launched a video today where he's walking with his son, Brady, it summarizes his view so well. So no, I think Tim's a great candidate. When I chaired the party, if we needed a go-to guy to fire up a crowd, you call Tim Ryan. He's got as much of a natural charisma and ability to fire up people, and he can do it in all 88 counties of Ohio. I've seen him in big cities. I've seen him in small towns. He's very strong. And the good news right now is the other side is an embarrassment. I mean, they literally, like, they're competing to be the next Josh Hawley. It's embarrassing to watch. Not one of them supported Donald Trump in 2016, yet they all are pointing to the other ones for not being Trumpy enough in 2016. I mean, it's a joke. I'm Republican, more conservative leaning and moderate columnists and others I know are literally saying, my God, it is so painful watching them. So Tim Ryan, may also find himself, take nothing for granted, but on paper, if he can keep up with the fundraising and the organization building, he'll be the better candidate in terms of who he is and what he stands for. And I think he'll be able to appeal more to a lot of voters in Ohio who, like you said, delivered Sherrod Brown an 8-point victory when Sherrod was up against a very right-wing candidate in 2018.
Yeah, that's my hope anyway. But I look at the Republican contenders right now, and you've got the wife of the Timken fortune, and you've got a crazy Josh of your own, Mandel, who got thrown out of a Trump fundraiser, which I thought was hysterical.
He did. But here's the secret. Trump is going to like him. Trump did not endorse Jane Timken, who you mentioned early. I think that's going to cost her, because the more this goes on, this guy, Josh Mandel, is just like Hawley. You cannot be out-Trumped when it comes to him. And I think Trump, and by the way, he's the only one who's run statewide. He's run twice and for Senate, and then he dropped that last Senate race. He's way ahead in the polls. So this guy is like out of central casting for the kind of guy that Trump will like. So, I wouldn't call him a favorite. It's very early, but he's got a lot of advantages. But I think Donald Trump is going to watch this guy, Josh Mandel, and say, that's my kind of candidate. But I think he'd be a terrible candidate in general for the Republican Party.
Yeah, I'm not going to jump in.
He's on a ticket with Mike DeWine, and he's attacking everything Mike DeWine's done already.
Yeah, I'm not going to jump into the middle of that, because I don't pick who I want, based on who's the worst, because we could end up getting the worst, and that's one of those scary things. Because I look at Josh Mandel as just a snotty rich kid, and that's the last thing we need in the U.S. Senate. Yeah,
no, he's bad news. What's funny is he's also been a chameleon. He was pushing for Gore in 2000. Jason Cantor had a great story about how when they were both treasurers, or they're both statewide officials, Mandel approached Cantor about doing a radio program for good moderate veterans like Mandel and Cantor. So he's been changing stripes every single election. I mean, in a scary way, honestly. And now he's all in for Trump. You'd never know that he used to run around saying he was a moderate. So this is a guy who is sort of the last person you want in public service at any level.
No, and this brings me to an interesting point, because I like people who are true to what their positions are. I don't want someone who's going to stick their finger in the wind and whatever the politic of the day is where they go. I want somebody who's actually got a skin in the game. And I look at someone like Tim Ryan as, he's always been the champion of working people from a working class town like Youngstown, who just was battered and beaten through the deindustrialization, losing the steel mill and all of the horrible things that happened when that went through. And here's a guy who gets up and says, we can move forward, we can rebuild, we need to do those things. That's the kind of fight I like.
No, he's lived it. His family's lived it. I think in his video today, his grandfather lost his job in the same way so many others have. He fights so hard for the Valley. It's tough, but he's had some big successes there, whether he was in the minority, the majority. So, no, I think he, as I said, I've been with him in a lot of places, and I've seen him speak to people in all parts of the state. And he'll, like you just said, he'll give the same speech. And people like it everywhere, because whether you're in a smaller town or an urban area that's struggling, Tim gets that struggle, and I think he's a very good candidate. He'll I think come across very well all across Ohio.
Because here's my fear. My fear has been, I'm sure you've noticed this like everyone else has, the Republican Party is kind of pivoting. They're in a moment right now where all of their ideology and all the things of the past have either failed, are failing, or are exposed for being bad ideas that they always were. So now they're kind of pivoting, trying to be the party of the working class. They now care about working people. And somehow now corporate America is the bad guy, especially when corporate CEOs are saying that black people should vote. I want to make sure that we don't allow the Republican Party to claim ground like Donald Trump did in stealing labor's message on trade issues and going after China and reshoring manufacturing. I want to make sure that the Republican Party is pinned with all of the horrible things that they've done, and they stay pinned.
Yeah. I mean, I think the key on our side is that you have candidates whose, whatever their other views are, their core message is about jobs and wages and workers. I mean, that's Sherrod Brown's secret sauce is there may be some issues that he believes in that some of the people who vote for him don't believe him in, but they know at the end of the day, his job number one, his North Star is fighting for their wages, for their pensions. They kind of have internalized that after him being years doing it. Tim Ryan's got the same core, and that cuts through a lot of other political clutter that the other side tries. We've been talking about it, Dr. Seuss, and Tim Ryan was the one who gave this awesome speech about Dr. Seuss a few weeks ago on the House floor. If they're talking about that goofy stuff and they see you in that you're the one fighting for their jobs, it cuts through all of it. If they don't think you're fighting for their job and you never talk about that or wages or pensions, then that other stuff might work. But if it's clear that at your gut, you're fighting for them every day and they feel it's for them, then I think it really cuts through. And that's, again, been Sherrod's magic. That's I think, Tim Brown's. He exudes that. And I think that's, for someone to win Ohio, you need that.
Yeah, I'm hoping Tim Ryan does well. But here's last bit, because I think you're right. When people truly believe that you're fighting for their jobs and their families' future, they're going to forgive a lot of things, except for no more meat and plant-based beer. David, no more meat. Right. Joe Biden's taking away the meat.
I mean, there was a great fact check on that today where it said it was like imaginary or something. I mean, it really is. And it just shows you, I think, what a bubble they're in, that it's not only one person saying it, but it gets spun up into all this total nonsense. Again, it's going to work. People are going on and on the last couple of days about Joe Biden's approval rating. I think he's doing great, but we know that it's a very divided country. And with somewhere in the low 30s of the population, percentage-wise, all that stuff is going to hit. And they're going to be people all over this country freaked out about meat and Dr. Seuss and baseball. And, I mean, you try and appeal to almost everyone you can, but there's a certain group that's going to appeal to. But I think there are a whole lot of other voters, frankly, that are watching Joe Biden, seeing that he's serious, seeing that he frankly he does try and be bipartisan. He's not tweeting crazy, nasty stuff. And I think they're judging him as working really hard to solve problems. So at some point, as Biden does better than most of us, including myself, he doesn't get distracted by any of that stuff. The thing I'd say more than anything else about his first 100 days, he's focused. They must have some whiteboard somewhere in their office that clearly says COVID, 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 jobs, 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 and just don't worry. I mean, because they don't get taken off onto these other fights, which is right now exactly what they need to do. And you think about it, you see these other countries. And it's, again, this is not something Joe Biden would ever talk about, and it's hard to put a number on it. He has literally saved hundreds of thousands of American lives.
Yep. I mean, the vaccine, the rollout has been incredible. He has shown up. He has done the job, and I give him credit for that. But, David, I appreciate the time and the thoughts, as always. Good stuff.
Thanks, Rick.
Look forward to talking to you again.
Take care. Talk to you soon.
Good stuff, David Pepper. Look, Joe Biden's not taking the meat. Not going to do it. Or, my favorite Mike Pence is.
We're not going to let Joe Biden and Kamala Harris cut America's meat.
No, we're not. Let's take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You'll listen to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. In 1948, gold was discovered at John Suter's mill in California. As word spread, fortune seekers from all across the United States and across the world flocked to California in what became known as the Gold Rush. This included thousands from China. Many of the Chinese miners planned to return home with the gold they mined. As the easily accessible gold became more and more scarce due to the rush, resentment grew against foreign miners. In 1850, California passed the Foreign Miners Tax, charging those who came from outside the United States $20 a month. On this day in labor history, the year was 1862. The California legislature passed an act to further limit Chinese miners. The official title was an act to protect free white labor against competition with Chinese coolie labor and to discourage the immigration of the Chinese into the state of California. The word coolie referred to unskilled laborers from China and the Indian subcontinent. It was also often used as a derogatory term for Chinese people. The act implemented new taxes and licensing requirements on Chinese miners. The steep taxes led many Chinese to leave mining. Nearly 12,000 Chinese workers found employment with the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad. They performed extremely dangerous work laying the track through the Rocky Mountains. Yet, when the railroad project was completed, the Chinese workers were excluded from the celebrations. They were also not allowed to ride on the trains that crossed the continent for the first time. Anti-Chinese racism continued to grow. 20 years after the passage of the California law, the federal government passed the Chinese Exclusion Act. This law prohibited the immigration of Chinese labor. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Why all this hoopla about Earth Day? Grump the barons of big oil and other corporate plunderers of our natural resources? But the global demand to save the Earth is not hoopla. It's an imperative struggle for human survival. And the day does not just celebrate a planet, but the feistiness of the human spirit, the tenacity of millions of everyday Americans committed to the ethic of good stewardship. People like Diane Wilson of Seadrift, Texas, a fourth-generation shrimper on the Gulf Coast. She's the personification of persistence, having spent 40 years battling the raw greed of Formosa Plastics, a Taiwanese chemical giant whose gross pollution has devastated the fishing ecology and economy of Gulf waters in her home area. And, hallelujah! Last August, Wilson's indefatigable spirit prevailed, for she won the largest private citizen's lawsuit in U.S. history against an industrial polluter. She's getting no time to savor the victory, though, for another multi-billion-dollar polluter named Max Midstream is attacking this same fragile ecosystem. Max proposes to dredge a deep channel through Matagorda and Lavaca Bays so massive oil tankers can reach a new, huge crude oil terminal that Max intends to own there. A channel that would plow straight through an underwater Superfund site, unearthing deposits of deadly mercury that aluminum giant Alcoa had carelessly dumped there for years. But look out, Max, here comes Diane again. She's putting her own health on the line with a hunger strike to draw attention to the profiteering maneuvers of this latest corporate plunderer. She's petitioning President Biden to cancel Max's dredging permit. This is Jim Hightower saying, to sign her online petition, go to bit.ly/stop dredging. The Hightower Radio Lowdown is brought to you by the Lowdown Happy Hour, live streamed from the Chat and Chew Cafe. Details at hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I gotta tell you, I'm still amazed that the right keeps throwing out the same failed rhetoric, thinking that someone's gonna buy it. You know, Joe Biden's taking your meat. He's taking the meat. He's taking the meat. Yes, he is.
Going to let Joe Biden and Kamala Harris cut America's meat.
Nope, we're not going to let that happen. I mean, they've been throwing this out for years now. But this time I think it's a little different. Desperation, sure, but now they're actually coming around and saying maybe climate change is actually real. That pretty interesting to me. But again, I love the fact that they don't have anything because there's nothing for them to fight back on because they're wrong. Much like I love the fact that Joe Biden just shows up every day and is doing the job. We can argue about the policy. We can argue about if it's far enough. And look, for some, it's never going to be far enough. But I love the fact that we're getting some stuff done. And on the infrastructure front, the fact that we're talking about restructuring our economy in ways that are going to help workers and seniors and we the people, I think is extremely important. And here to share some thoughts on infrastructure being more than just pipes and houses and roads and bridges, but actually in how we take care of our seniors and our most vulnerable. I've asked Max Richtman to come talk with us. Max is the president and CEO of the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. Their website, ncpssm.org. We'll get links out so you don't have to try and figure that out. Max, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and I couldn't agree with you more that it's refreshing, to say the least, to have a president who goes to work every day to help the people of this country, and not someone who's putting out these off-the-wall tweets in the middle of the night.
And someone who doesn't need reassurance constantly and his ego stroked. Just somebody who's going to get up and do our job. And one of the things that I'm thrilled to see is that, finally we're going to start talking about how we treat the most vulnerable in our community, our seniors, especially low-income seniors, as they get into the golden years and such a lack of infrastructure to keep people in their homes and keep people with a little quality of life. I'm thrilled to see that there's some money and some discussion on building that infrastructure.
Absolutely. The president, he talked about it during the campaign, and he made a commitment to do more for seniors, and he's living up to that promise. He's keeping his word. As you point out, the infrastructure bill, Part 2, will have some very important pieces which are necessary because we have a lot of seniors now, but you ain't seen nothing yet. We have, right now, 10,000 people, 10,000 turn 65 every day. I read a recent article in the Washington Post that the number of seniors is going to grow by more than 40 million people, about double by the year 2050. And the oldest of the old, those older than 85, those numbers will triple by the year 2050. And we need to be aware of that. We need to have an infrastructure plan in place that will accommodate that and help take care of those people.
Yeah, sadly, what's been going on over the years, and where I live here in central Pennsylvania, the county here that I live in, they're in the process of trying to sell off one of the county nursing homes, which were at one point where we helped the most vulnerable. We helped the poor and the indigent to make sure that their final years had some security. Now they're selling them off to profiteers and doing away with that mission of caring for the poor and caring for people who need it. Now it's all about the bottom line and profit. And it's been this way for a couple of decades now that we've been privatizing and profitizing all of those safety net things of the past. So this is why I think it's important that this administration realize that we've been gutting this safety net for decades, and somebody needs to step forward and sew that safety net back together.
Well, the president's plan does just that. It stitches together the safety net, reinvents it in some ways. Seniors prefer to be at home. I'm sure you know that,
Yep.
rather than being in an institution, and it's less expensive and safer. We've seen that because of the pandemic. But the problem is we don't have enough workers, home care workers, to meet this demand that is going to grow exponentially all over the country, including where you are. And so this proposal that is going to be included in phase 2, as I call it, of the infrastructure plan, is going to pump in $400 million to help revitalize the home care process. And it's going to do that by expanding the Medicaid program to allow more providers to take care of people in their homes. One way it's going to do that is raise their salaries. The median salary, this is astonishing when I first read it, for a home care worker is about $17,000 per year, just above poverty level.
Yeah, it's about $9 an hour.
Half of the home care workers in our country are on some form of public assistance, such as food stamps, because it's not enough money to live on. So there will be an incentive for people to enter that profession, to provide home care as it's needed. This $400 billion that's going to be included in the infrastructure plan will go to states through the expansion of the Medicaid program, and will allow those funds to be available, which now they are not, for home and community-based services, boosting the pay, as I said, for those workers, providing for the first time paid leave. Can you believe it? Paid leave and health care for caregiver workers, and a lot of other benefits. So It's going to go a long way towards helping people like those who are going to be left out in the cold when the nursing home that you just talked about shuts down.
No, it's not going to shut down. They're going to profitize it.
Well, that's even worse. It's going to cost more money. The people aren't going to be able to afford it.
Yep.
This is another reason I think that home care is the right approach.
No, this is something I've been talking about for years, and I think that is something is really important. I've said for years I'm against welfare and handout programs, always have been. As a kid growing up in the projects and having the indignity of using food stamps as a child, I still traumatized from that. I don't think anyone should have to beg for food or help. I think back to my mother always wanted a job. And I think if the private sector won't or can't, the public sector has to step in. And this home health care situation is a perfect place to put people into get them good, decent wages with benefits and opportunities to help people in their community to stay into their homes. To me, this is a perfect opportunity to take people and give them hope and opportunity to help in the community and help themselves at a moment when we desperately need the help.
I agree. I agree completely. I think we found the right president whose heart is in the right place, whose instincts are in the right place, and I think we're going to see some real progress. One thing I'd like to mention, if it's okay,
sure.
is the Medicare program is a terrific program. I haven't never met anybody that's on Medicare that would be happy to give it up.
No, my grandmother would have beat you with her walker if you threatened to take it from her.
And I believe that completely. Despite the fact that it's a great program, it's not perfect. It does not have coverage for things that are really important to older folks: vision, dental, hearing, not covered by the Medicare program. And those are pretty darn important, and I'm sure you would agree with that. We're hoping and we're lobbying as hard as we can to see that this next infrastructure plan will go beyond the $400 million for
billion, right? 400 billion.
Did I say million? I meant
Yeah.
billion for home care, but also expand the Medicare program to include vision, dental, and hearing. So we're hopeful, and we've been talking. I have been talking to a lot of members of Congress in the last couple of weeks. Just today, I talked to a member of Congress from Florida. She's on board. Most the people I've been talking to have committed to working towards expanding the Medicare program to include those important services that are not covered. And the last thing I wanted to say on Medicare, the cost of prescription drugs. I'm sure you hear about that every time you hear from your audience. The prescription drugs cost too much. One of the reasons is when Medicare expanded the last time to cover prescription drugs in 2003, a specific prohibition was built into that law that prevents the Medicare program, the federal government, from negotiating with the pharmaceutical companies to make sure they can bring down the price. They can't do it now. It's against the law to
against the
negotiate.
law.
Can you believe that?
No, because we're Americans, Max. We pay full price. We don't dicker. We don't haggle. We're Americans, damn it. We pay full price.
Well, people can't afford that. And what we need to do, and I hope it'll be in this or in another law that gets through the Congress quickly and signed by the president, would not just allow but mandate the federal government to negotiate for the best price on behalf of the Medicare program for pharmaceuticals. That's well overdue. You know, when that law was passed in 2003, I worked at the National Committee to Preserve Social Security Medicare. I was in the gallery of the House of Representatives until about 2 in the morning. I went home, went to sleep. I turned on C-SPAN around 8 in the morning, and lo and behold, a provision had been put in to specifically prohibit the government from negotiating. You can be sure, I think you know who was in the room when that deal was cut. It wasn't the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. It was the pharmaceutical industry.
Yep.
Time for that to change.
Yeah, it was the likes of Billy Tozen and their clan.
You got it. You've done your homework. It was Billy Tozen, the chairman of the one of the committees that had jurisdiction over the prescription drug part of Medicare. And you know what? After he finished that,
he took $1 million gig as the head of Big Pharma.
Exactly.
Of course he did. He got his payoff. And what did we get? We got shortchanged again. And this is my problem with having these folks in this revolving, swinging door of doing bad things in Congress and then taking high-paying gigs afterwards.
That's exactly what happened. And I'm glad you know about it. I'm glad you're talking about it. I hope others will talk about it because now the Congress has an opportunity to change that.
We can make things right.
In 2003.
And the reality is I would like to see Medicare expanded to include younger people as well. I mean, there's some talk of 50 and above. Medicare at 50, I think, would be a great thing or 55. I think was it 50 or 55?
There are plans in the Congress that we've been hearing about that would include, besides the benefits I just talked about, would include lowering the age. There's one plan that would bring it down to 55. One that would bring it down to 60, and that would be a great help. I go to town meetings all over the country, hundreds of them over the years. There are so many seniors who wait until they get on Medicare, wait until they turn 65, because they need to go to the dentist, they need to go to the audiologist, they need to have their vision checked.
Yep.
But they wait because they think, well, I can't afford it, but if I wait a few more years and get on Medicare, I'll be able to do it. That's not right.
No, it's not right. And what it does is, and this is another one of those things that why I believe everyone should have health insurance. We need a national insurance program. I would love to see Medicare for all. Not going to happen, not going to happen under this administration. But I would love to see cradle to grave health care because just what you said. People are going to wait to get treatment. They're going to wait to get, their vision checked or their hearing checked or that pain in their stomach checked until it's too damn late. And then it costs 100 times more, or you get, horrible outcomes and then a lifetime of care after that. When we could have just caught something early when it was simple, cost $1 or $2 and moved on from it. Because we can't afford it, we wait, and it ends up costing 10 times more. And I think that's a huge problem with our system across the board.
I think that's right. We call it penny wise, pound foolish, right? You try to save a little bit of money right now and end up spending a lot more.
No, you're right, but for a lot of people, penny wise is they don't have the penny. It's not a matter of like I'm going to use this for something else. I know people who are the exact situation that you were talking about. They were 64 years old, didn't go to have that chest pain checked out early because hey, I can't afford to go to the doctor. 6 months before they're on Medicare, they have a heart attack, and now they're broke. And it's insane to me.
It is insane, and we also are looking towards some changes in the Social Security program. Again, a terrific program, but it does not have a formula. It has a COLA, cost of living adjustment. Anybody who's on Social Security knows what a COLA is, but it's insufficient. It is calculated on mistaken information. It doesn't measure inflation year to year as it affects an older person. It measures inflation as it impacts the wage earner. So here's an example. 3 out of the last 8 or 9 years, the COLA has been 0. And when I go to these town hall meetings and the announcement is made in the fall of what the COLA is going to be for the upcoming year, and I say, well, the COLA is 0 because your cost of living hasn't gone up. You know what the reaction is? Laughter.
Right.
Laughter. And the problem is the formula does not look at does not look at those goods and services and put enough weight on them that affect and apply to seniors. And the purpose of the COLA is so that your Social Security benefit keeps up with inflation. One of the reasons that COLA was zero 3 out of those 9 years was the price of gasoline dropped dramatically. So much weight is put on that in the formula for determining the COLA that it pushed the COLA down to zero. But guess what? Seniors aren't using gasoline as much as working people. They're not going to work and coming home every day, not dropping kids off at school. And at the same time, not enough weight has been put on the cost of medicine, the cost of health care. So we've got a lot of work to do. Yeah. Social Security, Medicare, and home care. There's plenty of opportunity to improve the lives of seniors, and I hope we can get something accomplished this year.
So last line of questioning I've got for you, because you've got like the governor of South Dakota coming out and saying, well, the infrastructure bill is just full of all kinds of stuff that isn't infrastructure, like pipes and houses. But also, going into the fact that this, talking about senior, the infrastructure to take care of seniors is not the traditional Republican view of what infrastructure is, which is just, hard surfaces, roads and bridges. That's it. How do you get past that, and what are you asking people to do?
Well, you've got to convince enough voters that in this 21st century, there's a lot more to infrastructure than bridges and roads, and I think if enough people listen to your show, other programs that I've been part of, and others as well, where there are a number of groups that are working on these. There's a coalition called the Leadership Council of Aging Organizations. It's about 70 groups representing tens of millions of people. We chair it right now, and we're all working towards that goal of improving Social Security, expanding the Medicare program, and making sure this increase in funding, the $400 billion in the president's plan for home care, becomes law.
Yeah, we need to do something. I'd love to see a million granny march. I think that would be, got their masks on, their walkers, their canes, shaking in the air. I love the image. But Max,
well, if there is one, you should speak at it.
I would most certainly love to. But Max, I appreciate the time. I hope folks will check out the website, ncpssm.org, National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. We'll get links out on social media how you can do that. Max Richtman, I appreciate you taking time for us. Always good talking to you, buddy.
Thank you for inviting me.
Anytime. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Do you see infrastructure, including how we take care of Granny, how we make sure that people live in their final years with dignity and respect? I know I do. Love to hear your thoughts, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1944. That was the day the Army National Guard seized the Chicago property of Montgomery Ward and removed its chairman, Sewell Avery. The Chicago-based company repeatedly refused to accept a National War Labor Board order to recognize the workers' union and abide by the board-negotiated collective bargaining agreements. After refusing the second board order, President Franklin Roosevelt ordered the Army National Guard to seize the company's central mail order house, retail store, and other related properties in the city. Avery was physically carried out of his office. Wartime no-strike pledges were in effect to avoid strikes or any disruption in war production. From a distance, it looked as if the president had triumphed the cause of labor in forcefully implementing the Wagner Act. Workers of the CIO United Mail Order Warehouse and Retail Employees Union had walked off the job over recognition issues on April 12th. Montgomery Ward officials argued again, as they had 2 years earlier, that they were not engaged in war production, held no government contracts, and that the dispute is not one which might impede the prosecution of the war by the board's own terms. But the government feared strike activity would only spread to other industries in Chicago and elsewhere. Local Teamsters and railway brotherhoods all supported the strike and refused to handle shipments to and from ward facilities. The CIO union agreed to end the strike on the eve of the seizure. Others in the labor movement called FDR's move a hoax and a device to break strikes and get workers back on the job without any gains. Roosevelt issued a third seizure of wards facilities nationwide by the end of the year.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as you said the other day, 3 out of 4 unvaccinated Americans do not want the J&J shot. No, they're not thrilled with the news media that's come out that 6 women got blood clots. And again, who knows? And I've heard the numbers up to like 20 now. But out of like 7 million people, that's incredible. And the fact that, I'm looking at this and I'm going, the fact that you're talking 20, let's say it is 20 out of 7 million people had this effect. Wow. I gotta think that, 20 out of 7 million people have an effect of drinking, too much water. So to me, the fact that it is this safe is pretty remarkable to me. But it shows how skittish we are as people, that 3 in 4 of us are saying, no, I'm going to choose the other ones, which is okay because we've got other options. But this is one of those things where you go, was it the right thing? And this is where I was at the beginning, and I still am. Was it the right thing to make that public, to make that pause happen? Because people are skittish. People are going to panic react. And I think that's what we're seeing. Now, I guess you could take these J&J shots that Americans aren't going to take and send them overseas, as we're doing with the unused AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccines. Evidently, we're going to start beginning to share our vaccine supply that were developed by AstraZeneca and the University of Oxford to other developing countries, something like 10 million doses of the vaccine that have been produced, waiting for FDA inspection, and they can be shipped out. There are 50 million more in various production stages that could go out in May and June. We could help vaccinate the world. That is a good thing, because guess what? India is getting slammed right now. Evidently, according to reports, today India reported like 350,000 new COVID infections. The 5th consecutive global record, day after day after day. They've now recorded more than 17 million cases. They had over 2,800 people die, and they're pushing 200,000 dead from the pandemic, which everyone is saying is probably 7-10 times higher than that number, several times higher than that number, because they're out of oxygen in a lot of places. That's scary stuff. Fortunately, we haven't been hit again, and I'm knocking on a whole bunch of stuff. If we just don't be stupid. I mean, that's where I come back to. Don't be stupid. Don't do dumb things. Be calm. Wear your mask. Stay out of large environments for a while. I know everyone's raring to get back to what was normal, but we're so close. And my concern in these next couple of weeks and months, because as I've said in the past, I've got a listener who sends me his model, and he sadly, brilliant guy, but he has sadly been accurate. And I remember when he said there were, months ago, back over the summer, that his model said we were going to see 3,000 people dying a day in January. And I'm like, no way, get out of here. And, well, we saw 3,000 people a day dying. he was right, 8 months earlier. The models that he had used predicted it almost to the T. And sadly, there's a prediction of another spike coming as the variant happens, and as we don't get those last groups that are the stubborn ones to get the vaccine. So don't do dumb stuff. How about we have my listener who's brilliant. How about we make him wrong for once? There's a goal. We should make a T-shirt out of that. Make him wrong for once. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, our good friend Bob Ney is going to be here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day. And where's the meat? Where is the meat? And I gotta pull the clip out of the archives of Mike Pence going on about the meat.
In fact, the California senator that he named as his running mate this week said during her short campaign for president that Americans needed to be, and I quote, educated about the effect of our eating habits on our environment. Senator Kamala Harris said she would change the dietary guidelines of this country to reduce the amount of red meat Americans can eat.
Ooh.
Well, I've got some red meat for you. We're not going to let Joe Biden and Kamala Harris cut America's meat.
Not gonna do it. What a freak. Right back after that.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
It's Earth Day.
It's precisely the sort of target that we need to see.
President Biden vows to cut U.S. emissions in half by 2030. European Union and Britain accelerate emissions cuts under the Paris Climate Agreement. Plus,
a lot has happened since we introduced this resolution 2 years ago.
AOC and Senator Markey reintroduced the Green New Deal.
All of those vows, cuts, and reintroductions straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Everything's infrastructure, because infrastructure is the word that sells with voters. And if they're successful in doing that, they will ram this through reconciliation, and suddenly, voila, you have the Green New Deal.
Voila! Who knew? Someone really ought to tell AOC and Senator Markey, who just reintroduced the actual Green New Deal. Yes, but that's just what they want you to think. A cunning misdirection. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, hey, happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day to you, too. But of course, for us, every day is Earth Day. Since the first Earth Day in 1970, the planet has warmed by more than 1 degree Celsius over pre-industrial levels because of humanity's use of fossil fuels. And that, according to a new report by the World Meteorological Organization, is resulting in relentless intensification of the climate emergency. Last year, the world saw record-breaking extreme weather disasters on nearly every continent, along with accelerating sea level rise and ocean acidification. Solving man-made climate change is the focus of President Joe Biden's 2-day virtual leaders summit on climate, beginning on Earth Day. As we go to air, Biden is set to announce new U.S. emissions targets under the United Nations Paris Climate Agreement to reduce U.S. greenhouse gas emissions by at least 50% below 2005 levels by 2030.
That's half. That's in 9 years, we'll never make it.
We can make it, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And that puts us on the path to his goal of net zero emissions by 2050. That's nearly double the target set under the Obama administration, and achieving it would transform the U.S. economy, generating jobs in decarbonizing electricity, transportation, manufacturing, and building construction, with huge increases in renewable energy deployment across the country.
You mean putting us all out of work so that we either freeze from the cold or die from the heat.
Or put everyone to work, making the U.S. a cleaner and greener place.
Oh, well, there's that.
In an interview with the Green News Report, climate scientist Dr. Michael Mann of Penn State University says Biden's target is in line with what the science indicates is necessary.
It's precisely the sort of target that we need to see. We know that we need to bring down global carbon emissions by a factor of 2 within the next decade if we're to remain on a course for limiting warming below catastrophic levels, 1.5 degrees Celsius, 3 degrees Fahrenheit. And so what Biden has done here is really up the ante.
I wonder how Auntie feels about it.
The details of Biden's plan have not yet been released, but Politico reports the target is designed to be achievable without help from the deeply divided Congress. The new target sends a message that the United States is rejoining the international effort to fight global warming after the climate denial of the Trump administration. This week, the European Union also increased their target, striking a provisional deal on sweeping climate legislation that sets a legally binding target of slashing the EU's net greenhouse gas emissions by 55% by 2030 and achieving net zero emissions by 2050.
Just like us.
The UK also announced a tougher target to cut their emissions 78% compared to 1990 levels by 2035.
Wow.
That would take the UK 3/4 of the way to reaching net zero by 2050. Here in the U.S., progressive Democrats are also pushing ahead. Democratic Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York this week reintroduced their Green New Deal framework to ensure that decarbonizing the U.S. economy includes equity and a just transition for working families. And U.S. climate action matters. Climate scientists say that if the world waits until the 2030s to get serious about cutting emissions, then the pace that would be required to meet the Paris Agreement's temperature targets would be very costly and may be technologically impossible. According to Dr. Mann, cutting emissions in half by 2030 is achievable with tools we already have on hand, but setting the target is only the beginning.
The real battle now is going to be over the next couple years if the Biden administration can use, whatever diplomatic tools it has at its disposal, and Democrats can use whatever parliamentary tools they have at their disposal to pass meaningful climate legislation that can complement the executive actions the administration is taking.
We wish them all luck. Only the fate of humanity hangs in the balance. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Happy Earth Day Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the Oscars did not fare very well. The number that they threw out is an average of 9.85 million viewers. That's not a lot. That's down from the 23.6 million viewers they had in 2020. Now, I would argue that you had 23.6 million viewers in 2020 because we were all glued to our TV set. But even at that, that was considered, I guess, a low point. But this is the first time that the Academy Awards has drawn fewer than 10 million people. And here's the thing. I've never watched an Academy Award. I've never watched the Oscars or the Academy Awards or what are the other ones, the Grifters or the Globes or none of those. I find them boring. I find them ridiculous. And I guess we as Americans are as well. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the meat, because no more meat for us. What was that woman's name from the Wendy's commercials? Clara Peller. Where's Clara when we need her? So we could find out where's the meat. Here to share some thoughts on where the meat is, I've asked our good friend Bob Ney, former congressman from Ohio and political analyst, to share some thoughts. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, thank you, Rick.
So the meat, it's going away. No more. It's no more for dinner. No more Sam saying, meat, what's for dinner? No more.
Don't show me the beef.
Evidently, that's been the talking point all weekend, that Joe Biden's going to come to your house, open your refrigerator, and steal the meat.
He's trying to force people to not buy meat anymore. Did you know that? It's the climate plan.
Did I miss that? Did I miss that in the plan?
Don't you remember the cow burping, what it does to the climate, the old EPA studies? Yeah. Well, that's what they're saying, that the climate plan includes cutting 90% of red meat from our diets. And that came from Colorado Representative Lauren Boebert.
Yeah.
And that was on Twitter on Saturday. And then there were personalities on Fox News that told different versions of the story, and that Americans are going to have to cut their consumption by 90%, blah, blah, blah. And then two Republican governors, Abbott of Texas and Brad Little of Idaho, tweeted their opposition, because they stood up for the red meat, to the Biden red meat policy that doesn't exist. The president has not proposed any limit on Americans' red meat consumption.
Yeah, and during the campaign, you may remember, Mike Pence himself.
We're not going to let Joe Biden and Kamala Harris cut America's meat.
So this isn't new, is it?
Yeah, but it got more attention than when Pence said it.
Yeah, well, because Pence is kind of boring. I mean, even this didn't get much attention.
Well, I've  it's some red meat for you.
I got some red meat for you.
Now, how they grasped this in a thin manner is it's a paper that scholars put together from Michigan and Tulane University.
Right.
And that paper estimates how greenhouse gas emissions would be affected if Americans purely hypothetically, decided to change what they eat in beef consumption to 4 pounds, I think it was, a year. It doesn't suggest, the paper doesn't, a mandatory limit. It just says hypothetically, and it was published before Joe Biden had won the Democratic presidential nomination. It doesn't mention Biden's name anywhere in the report, so I wanted to make that very, very, very clear. This one really was stretching it.
And here's the thing. I mean, they're stretching it, and people are buying it. I mean, I've had people email me and say, see?
Right.
Yeah. And, my favorite was Larry Kudlow, who jumped into the fray, not only saying they're taking your 4th of July hamburger away, they're going to make you drink plant-based beer.
Right. And Kudlow said that Americans would have to stop eating not only meat to hit the president's emission targets, but stop eating poultry and fish, seafood, eggs, and I think dairy. They would have to do that. Now, President Biden never said that, but Kudlow said it on his show. And so what they did is they're looking at emissions, and the president wants to reduce emissions. So you sit here and you say, okay, cows burp, and that leads to emissions. So President Biden wants to kill all the cows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not happening. But I was watching these spiels, and Kudlow, I have no idea why he's on TV, because even his delivery wasn't good. And it's one of those things where I'm going, does he even believe this himself as he's reading this? And multiple times he said plant-based beer, and I don't know where he gets his beer from. But again, beer is already plant-based. Barley and hops. Is there any meat byproduct in beer that you know of?
I used to be a connoisseur. I'm not anymore, but no.
I'm more like kind of a sewer. I drink the beer.
Well, I can now, since we're tying the president to things, I can tie it.
All right.
Cows walk over potentially some wheat that's grown. Therefore, it rubs off on the wheat. There's your red meat.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to tie it.
It's a
President
contact.
Biden is going to ban cows from walking through wheat fields. There you go.
I'm okay with that, because by going through the wheat fields, they're actually destroying the wheat that would go into the delicious beer.
There you go. True.
Now, if you framed it like that, no, we're not taking your red meat. We're saving the beer.
There you go. Now that will appeal more in America than the beef. True. See, you've spun it the right way. By the way, remember when the president, Obama, used to be talked into, not coerced, just talked into by Vice President Biden. They used to go get those burgers, remember, in Wilmington, Delaware, somewhere. I forget where. Yeah.
I've seen that picture everywhere today.
Yes, Sure.
Because of course we got to rub Biden's nose in it. No more burgers for you, Biden. And I'm
Isn't
going.
it funny, know, how something like this can start?
Yeah, I mean, but
really.
as I'm reading this, I'm going, is someone really outraged about this? Because I'm looking at it going, there's no way I'm going to get behind a policy that's going to say I can't have meat anymore. Sorry,
right.
That ain't happening.
Well, you know what's weird? I mean, the fact that it shows up, it's almost like you don't beat your wife, do you? They admit that about Biden limiting red meat consumption, so it gets out there about the name Biden limiting red meat consumption. That's just it's quite amazing. Right.
It's crazy. Let's get on to some good news. I'm not going to get into the banning of the straws or any of that stuff.
Okay.
We're starting to withdraw troops from Afghanistan.
Yes, we are. And, somebody asked me today on one of the shows that I do in the morning, and they said, well, could something happen? Yes, there could be acts of violence, but most likely it won't happen because the Taliban and the Afghan government basically are going to have talks once we leave. So I think for the most part, although something could happen, it will be a most likely peaceful withdrawal. I think the president who didn't do the Trump May 1st deadline that he sent or set when he was still president, he announced it would be in September. But I think the fact that prior to May 1st, the president moving troops shows that, he's serious about it, and he's just changed the time frame, because that May 1st probably, honestly, by President Trump, although I think it was a great thing, finally, that he said he would remove troops after 4 years, I don't think that was set in stone.
I think it was unrealistic.
Yeah, it wasn't set in stone. So the process is beginning. We've been there forever, the longest war, and now it's finalizing itself, which is a very, very good thing.
No, I mean we're going on what? It's going on almost 20 years.
Correct. Right.
It's time to get out.
And several trillion dollars, and of course, most importantly, the loss of American lives.
Yeah, but what do you say to the person? And I've had this thrown at me in the past, because I've been calling for us to get out of that region for a very long time. What do you say to the person who goes, Bob? If we cut and run, those lives will have been wasted, and we can't for them we can't do that.
Well, I believe, except if I'm correct, except for one soldier, and I think I was out of the country at the time. Every soldier in the district I represented that was killed, I went to the funerals. And, I felt members of Congress, should do that. And you go up to the family and, what do you say? That, you're going to form an opinion that, well, we're not really winning this war, so your loved one, did this in vain. I mean, the soldiers, the men and women, responded to the call, responded to the duty that they were given, and they gave their all. And I think that's how you leave it. We can't look back now and say, everybody, that went there, it was all in vain. They tried their best. They were given a deck of how it was dealt, and they tried their best as soldiers, and that's just it's the way it ended up. I mean, we can reflect on the people that created the orders. I mean, Afghanistan itself was a direct invasion. Osama bin Laden. I think the tougher one even is Iraq, where men and women were sent in to find the weapons of mass destruction, and I think that's even a tougher one.
Yeah, especially the ones, in my opinion, we sent them to find things that we knew weren't there. Now, I'm not assuming what you know or you don't know. I know you can't say even if I'm right or wrong, but I don't believe that there were things there that we were told were there. The cartoon drawings of the mobile labs and the WMDs that were destroyed, that we sold them. I got a problem with all of that, and I'm hoping once we bring everybody home, once we're out of there, that we can then demand for a full, open, transparent hearing, and that we do get that information that made people vote and pursue this course of action.
I've said this on your show before, but I've been asked many times, was one of the worst things that ever happened to me, Jack Abramoff, going to prison. I said, no, that's not the worst. The worst thing that happened to me was being shown what I was shown, which I would love to tell about, being shown what I was shown, and now knowing none of it was true, and knowing that the people that showed it lied and people died. And they should be held accountable, and they never have been. We should at least that is the number one thing that bothers me.
No, I'm hoping at some point that we do pursue
I hope
that.
so. Like the 911 Commission, finally.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's something I think long overdue, something we most certainly need. Finally, wanted to get your thoughts on the American Families Plan to expand Medicare, get some infrastructure in place to help seniors stay in their homes, to help a generation, the boomer generation, as they move into retirement and beyond. Curious your thoughts.
Well, this is a truly fantastic plan, and of course, right now Bernie Sanders, is out front with some other members with it. Democratic senators, I think there's about 15 or 16. They sent President Biden a letter, and they want to expand Medicare, which was done anyway in President Obama's original ACA. You and I talked about that. Joe Lieberman stepped in and did his magic, for the insurance companies at the time. Now they're going back to it in a couple-fold. One, that it will expand for younger than 65, and you pay in. Number two, it will also provide, well-needed dental, hearing, eye care. But this is a winner, and the reason it's a winner is, first of all, it's Medicare. And people that are on Medicare, I don't care if they're Republican, I don't care if they're independent, Democrat, Libertarian, whatever they are, they like their Medicare. It's a decent success story. And when you go to mess with Medicare, believe me, you hear it from the population. This is something that they can sell. This is something they need to get the word out, stick with it and promote it. And I think they could get some bipartisan support for this. I mean, there's no real downside to it. It's going to take people, and I don't know the magic age, Rick, maybe 55, 56, 60, I don't know. But taking people in early alleviates a lot of strain on the other health plans and allows people to pay in. Medicare's worked. People know that. I think this is a big winner. And I think that people that get on the other side of this, if they do, on the Republican side, are going to have a lot of heartburn.
No, and this is one of those things that I think, as you said, a winner, because look, there are people who are my age, a little bit older, who are dying to retire. They're ready to go. They're financially secure enough. Their homes are paid for. Their kids are grown. The only thing that's keeping them tied to their jobs at this moment is that they get their health care, and they can't go out on their own without the health care, because no matter how much money you got saved, it's not going to be enough in the event of a major illness. And the insurance rates to buy a single policy are through the roof. And in a lot of places, the ACA plans are too expensive for people to take on. I've said for years, open up Medicare, fix a reasonable price to it, get older people out of those jobs so younger people can come in, and let's move the economy along.
Well, what they will do, and you're exactly right. I know personally, and I'm sure you do, you hear tons of people that are just hanging on only because of the insurance where they're at, or they don't have enough and they have to work. And also, a lot of those people, once they get Medicare, they will also move out of homes, making them available for other people, and kind of do the empty nest downsizing type of deal. And they can do it because they don't have this alarming feeling that they can't make their health care payment, or if they don't have adequate health care, that they're going to lose the property they have. It's a win-win all the way around.
It's something I would like to see pass through, and we'll see how it plays out. I'm sure it's something we'll talk about in the coming days and weeks.
Sure,
Bob,
will.
As always, I appreciate the time, the insight. Thanks so much, my friend.
Thank you, Rick.
Good stuff. Our good friend Bob Ney. Let's take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1975. That was the day the AFL-CIO held a Jobs Now rally in Washington, D.C. A painful recession had pushed unemployment in the U.S. to 9%. Many workers across the nation thought the Ford administration was not doing enough to address the needs of working families. 60,000 people, many of them union members carrying banners representing their unions, gathered in RFK Stadium. There they heard speeches, including one from Senator Hubert H. Humphrey, who had served as vice president under Lyndon B. Johnson. His speech described the devastating impact of unemployment. Senator Humphrey said, "Our nation must recommit itself to the goal and the promise of full employment, a job for every American who is willing and able to work. Perhaps we would get bolder action and more compassion from this administration if some of its top advisors had a little taste of unemployment themselves. Perhaps they would know what unemployment is. It's drawing your last unemployment check with no job in sight. It's sitting in the dark to save on the light bill. It's making shoes last another month and driving on bald tires. It's eating a little less so the kids can eat a little more. It's facing eviction because you can't pay the rent or meet the mortgage. It's borrowing from your brother-in-law or letting your insurance lapse. It's facing yourself in the mirror and asking why and how much longer. It's wondering how a nation this rich, this enterprising, this great can let more than 8 million Americans who want to work and need to work go without work. Some protesters rushed the stage at the rally, causing it to end early. But his questions still remain. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the Pennsylvania state system of higher education, the PASHE system, the 14 Pennsylvania-owned colleges and universities, what I have called in the past the jewel of Pennsylvania, because it gives working class kids an opportunity to go to college. It's one of those things that I think is really important. We should be investing in heavily to give the next generation an opportunity to get the education that they need to be successful and to keep here in Pennsylvania, so that we keep people here, so that we don't lose another congressional seat. But the state system is talking about consolidating a bunch of universities and changing the names and all kind of craziness, because they say that the system is dwindling. We're losing students. There's a drop in the enrollment. And, from the PASHE numbers of the number of students enrolled, and this graphic is one of those things that really highlights their point. There's an interesting climb if you look at this graphic that's right here on the screen. You see the graphic going up. 2000, you got under 100,000 kids enrolled in the 14 state system university schools. And then, through 2005, all the way up till the peak in 2010. You saw this a continual growth up until 2010. But you see a really big jump in 2008 and 2009. And you go back to that, and you go back to the reality that what was going on in those moments. We had an economy that was in the dumps. We were losing 1 million jobs a month in 2009. The economy was terrible, and kids were going, "Hey, I gotta go get an education." And the Obama administration made some money available to help kids go to college. So that's where you see this little jump. But we were heading in the right direction. Year after year after year, more kids were going to college. They were getting, the tuitions were more reasonable. And then 2010 happens. 2010 happens, and you end up getting, here in Pennsylvania, Tom Corbett, who then chooses to go and cut $1 billion from education, a big part of it being higher ed. So this drop-off that you see, this massive drop-off, is thanks to our Republican friends. More bad ideas. So they could give corporate tax cuts away. Again, another GOP bad idea. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.